hey, I work for Montana State Parks Foundation and we're doing a fundraiser to try to reclaim 26 acres of land. Can you send a couple hoodies? And I'm like, absolutely. If we were backed by venture capital, we might get asked the end of the year, what's the ROI on that? Who knows? Who cares? We just need to help. Crumbs make a cake. That's what my father-in-law always says. You know, like you don't need to strike the one big deal. People talk about microaggressions. Like I think you can do the opposite of that. You can do like micro good deeds and it'll all kind of add up. Think of our audience as numbers. I think of them as a community. Doesn't really matter if there's 100 people or 100 million people in our subscribership. We're going to make the same kick-ass magazine for the 100 people that we would for 100 million.
Welcome to the Backcountry Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Mike Rogge, the owner and editor of Mountain Gazette. Mike, good to see you.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see your face. This is a long requested conversation. I feel like both of us have received many notes from listeners and fellow audience members requesting you to join the show. So we did it.
Here we are. We did it. It only took 5 months. I was getting tagged. You would put up episodes with other guests and I would, hop on LinkedIn or Instagram or somewhere and someone would tag me saying you need to go on this podcast. You need to go on this podcast. And I was like, well, I haven't been invited on this podcast and I don't want to just show up unannounced. So I appreciate the invite and it's nice to be here to chat with you.
Well, I got to say, actually, I appreciate your patience because I don't know. Sometimes I feel like sometimes when guests reach out, it immediately feels a little off-putting. Maybe it's just a personal preference thing, but it does feel odd when folks pitch themselves or suggest themselves as guests. So I appreciate it when I don't know. I don't know if that's respect or what it is, but that boundary, I feel like that's how we find most of our guests are folks that either get recommended or we eventually invite and connect and start an episode. So here we are.
I wouldn't show up at a dinner party at your house, without at least a 4-pack of beer or a 6-pack or a bottle of whiskey or something. So, I didn't want to show up uninvited. So I appreciate the invite. It is cool. And I'm glad to thank you to all of our readers at Mountain Gazette that were asking for me to join you on the pod. I've listened to a few episodes. I think it's a good show you have here.
Appreciate it. Well, let's dive in. We've got a fun conversation lined up today. We're going to be talking about the importance of understanding and truly caring about your audience. And I think there's a bunch of different ways we could slice this conversation. But Mike, I'm curious if you can kind of give us an opening statement. Why is this a topic that you're passionate about? Why is this something you care about?
Yeah. So, I've been in media for 20 plus years now. And one of the things I realized going back to, my first job out of college at Ski the East and Meathead Films was that where we really won our customers was when we would go on this movie tour, 70 stops in just the Northeast. We'd show up. Sometimes there'd be 12 people. Sometimes there'd be 200-300 people. But Chris and Jeff from Ski the East always sat down, talked. Everyone wants to share their ski stories. They listen to them all. And what I found is some would call that market research. They called it being friendly, and it was getting to know your audience. So one of the things that I've done with Mountain Gazette over the years is that, when I meet a subscriber out, I'm just as excited to meet them as they are maybe to meet me. And I want to know, how'd you hear about the magazine? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And, I'm here, I'm connected. I want to hear feedback. I just think that's the best way to make a better product, regardless of what your product is, to have feedback from your customers. And I find that in today's media landscape, it's starting to fade away, but a little too slowly for my liking, is people care more about numbers. I don't think of our audience as numbers. I think of them as a community. And it doesn't really matter if there's 100 people or 100 million people in our subscribership. We're going to make the same kick-ass magazine for the 100 people that we would for 100 million and listen to their feedbacks. And, I guess the other thing, man, is as we scale and we grow, and we've grown significantly in the last 6 months in particular, we're investing more in our community, ways in which they can reach out to us. Our customer service team has tripled in size in the last year, not because we have any problems with customer service, but because we want to be able to answer people's emails. We want to be able to talk to them. I reach out to people directly from my own email. Like, we're not trying to hide. I just think that if you had these niche media companies, which is really what outdoor is like niche media, if they started caring more about their readers, you'd have a lot more successful media companies out there that were putting out really good specific media and not this like broad strokes top 10 list crap that's just going for numbers and display ad impressions. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Well, I love that. Let's pump the brakes there. There's certainly a lot we can dive into, but let's backtrack a little bit. Can you give a little background on Mountain Gazette? Before this, you were doing video storytelling doc work. Are you still doing that, or is Mountain Gazette your focus these days?
I'm not. Mountain Gazette became my full-time job about 2 years ago. We're headed into year 4. It'll be 4 years in July since we turned on subscriptions. But before that, I've always really cared about storytelling from the human level. Not the idea that we're surrounded by superheroes and outdoor and action sports, but the idea that these incredible athletes are also regular people that, pay taxes, brush their teeth, go to bed, try to do a good job the next day. Like, they're regular people, except for one extraordinary part of their life. And I always found that relatability to be really good media strategy. And I found that it could apply to, a Haitian artist, which I wrote a book about, the blue collar generational nature of commercial fishing. Those are two subjects I knew nothing about, but was able to go in and just talk to people like, hey, your dad does this, your grandfather does this. Like, how does that make you feel? Why do you think you did this? Like, was this predetermined, or is this in your blood? And just hearing people's perspective and listening. And I felt like, listening is a good strategy to have as any kind of media creator. And so that was where I think I had some success in making films.
And then did Mountain Gazette, how did that come to fruition? Can you kind of give us the quick and dirty version?
Sure. So Gazette was founded in 1966 as Skier's Gazette. 1972 was changed to Mountain Gazette to reach a broader audience. Shut down in 1979, came back in 2000. Shut down again in like 2011, 2012. In 2019, I was told it was for sale. I really, really wanted to get back into magazines. I love making magazines. It's just print's my favorite medium. And thought it would be a nice complement to the video process, making films and sharing the longer form stories in print was kind of the original impetus. But then I got into Mountain Gazette, bought it in 2020 at a bar in Denver, bought it like it was a dirt bike, and we slowly but surely brought it back. My wife and I and my friend John that I played Little League Baseball with, he's our art director. Kim Stravers, who is a copy editor for my book and a copy editor at Powder Magazine, is our copy editor. And we still have that same crew today. Will speak to all 3 of those people today. Obviously my wife first, and then Kim and John close second and third. But we relaunched, and it was around the time that the pandemic was taking out a lot of magazines, and there was a lot of consolidation in outdoor. And I think at a time of, a lot of instability for readers on like where they were going to get the media they wanted, they saw a big format magazine and a dude that was saying like, hey, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. And we're, not really going to change the format. We'll change the story approach, obviously, as the times change, but we won't change the size or the respect. And it resonated with people. I think you can always stare at your iPhone for so long before you start to go crazy. And we're kind of proving that method. And we're proud that we just surpassed the Paris Review in number of subscribers. And we're looking to the next, frontier of like, what we can do with print. That's really all we're thinking about, is like how we can keep improving the print product again and again and again for our readers.
You guys are a niche media, and there's a lot of niche media in the outdoor industry. And you mentioned a couple minutes ago that if niche media could if you could stay focused on your audience, like it would solve a lot of the problems that media companies are facing today. Can you kind of describe what is that challenge that a lot of media companies are seeing, both outdoor and non-outdoor?
Yeah, so I think you have to look at the ownership structure and the incentives they have. I certainly poke fun of venture capital, but I have friends that are in venture capital. I have friends that have taken venture money. It's worked out great. Oh, some of our readers are venture capitalists in New York or in the Bay. But the thing about venture capital is like they're essentially putting a bet on your company that you're going to give a 4, 5, 6, God, maybe even a 10 or 15x return if you really found a unicorn. And that model works really well for, say, like a tech company, but not really well for a media company. It basically, like, it doesn't place the value on the individual reader. It places the value on tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of readers and consumers and what they represent, and will they buy more from you? What's their lifetime value to the company? Like things like that. It's like, dude, I've never cared about a statistic, which is the average revenue per customer. I don't care what the lifetime value, quote unquote, is. Like, one of our readers might pull me off of a boat that's sinking one day. You know what I mean? Who knows? Like, might rescue me. Like, I mean, you can't. I'm never going to measure the value of people off of revenue, because people are obviously worth so much more than that. But I think that's a problem with media right now, is they're trying to find ways they can squeeze more revenue out, whether it's social media, influencing campaigns that they can use to try to get people to buy stuff, or affiliate links, or top 10 lists because they're click worthy. One of my favorite things that is happening right now with the New York Post is they're getting real clickbaity with their headlines, which is, it's the New York Post, it's supposed to. People are in the comments being like, hey, I saved you the click. So it's like, is Kate Middleton still alive? And someone in the comments is like, she is. I saved you the click and ruined their display ad or whatever. And it's just, I love that people are getting smart to it. But part of the reason why media companies fail, I think, is because they don't give their readers the promise of their editorial mission. Sports Illustrated being a great example. Sports Illustrated has been everything except what people want it to be, which is a weekly collection of really great sports feature writing or columnists. That's what people really want, is like high quality stuff every week from Sports Illustrated, and they're willing to pay for it. But I think that there's just other ways of monetizing media that have proven to be kind of broken. And I don't know, if I have to rely on my community or 6 ad partners who are probably pining for their next job in the next year or two, I'm going to put my faith in tens of thousands of people versus 6 people. There's just better odds. And so, yeah.
Why do you feel like, I mean, what you're describing is caring about your audience. The fact that, you don't look at a subscriber as a statistic, but rather as an individual who one day might pull you out of the water. Like, why is that not a common approach?
I don't think so. One of the things that's funny is, like, if you looked at my resume, like, you'd see like it's littered with dead media companies, or like resuscitated media companies that came back as zombies, or, I worked for Vice Sports. God knows what's happening over at Vice right now. But no, I think that, again, it goes back to your incentives. Our incentive is to keep our readers around. And how do we do that? We make a magazine that they just can't miss. They need every single issue. When your incentive is to return money, if you're a group, for example, I worked for a couple of media companies that had a large number of magazines that worked for them. You have a couple mags that are really dragging and suffering because their industry might be suffering, whether it's an automobile title or a surf title, whatnot. I mean, I can remember like Nike pulling out of surfing, and surfing magazines struggled really badly. It was a huge ad partner for them, and Powder and Snowboarder and Bike had to kind of pick up the slack, if you will. That's a ton of pressure for us when we're just trying to tell stories about powder skiing, and the soul of skiing or whatever. And, media there's 2 kind of approaches to it. And one of them is that, like, you're sort of like a kitten in a box and you'll fucking grab onto anything to try to get out of it, is like the best metaphor I can come up with. That's like how most media companies run. Or it's like, us, where you're just like, cool, we could lose all of our ad partners and it would not change a thing about the magazine. It would look weird. Magazine without ads is kind of weird. It's kind of a coffee table book, but we could. And I think, again, that's the power of our audience, is, and I think that scares some people, because some people, and I don't mind saying, it's like a Rupert Murdoch, for example, like he can put his thumb on the scale of his empire and can change the way that people see, certain types of media. I can't do that. If I tried to do something like that in an issue of Mountain Gazette, or like endorse a political candidate, which like we're very firmly no politics in the magazine, like blatantly about like who to vote for, anything like that, dude, our readers would let us know by canceling their subscriptions. They'd just be like, no. It's not to say we don't challenge them. We're not chicken soup for the outdoor soul, but at the same time, we respect them. So we're not going to give them this like garbage content they can get online for free. So.
When I got to imagine, knowing your audience not only keeps them around, but it keeps them around because that's you tell stories, and a good story is all about knowing your audience. A good story is a reader reading a story and saying, "Oh, I could see myself in the shoes of this person." Is that what people show up for when they read Mountain Gazette? I mean, that's why I read it, is for the fascinating stories.
I think we always say we want to surprise, delight, and inform. And I think I've always thought of media diets like a real diet, and that if I ran 100 pages of just straight sick outdoor shots, I'm certain there's a large audience that would really love that. But also, like, it wouldn't really hit you at a deeper level. So I think, you have to surprise in that, in our next issue, we have a kayaking story that takes place in Chicago, which I think just off the bat is very surprising to people. But I also really like the idea that my hope is that readers will identify themselves, especially if they live in a mountain community, like, oh yeah, this is just a bunch of people that like to get together and do goofy stuff outside, on the Inform, we've got a story in the next issue about a river. Oh, it's allegedly being polluted in Montana, and the bad actors at play in that. And it took our writer almost 9 months to report on. Okay. So, and then we also have some really funny, goofy stuff in there that's just pure awesome adventure. And you're like, that's cool. And I just think it's like, it's got to be balanced. And I don't expect, someone actually said, I like 8 out of the 10, there's more than 10 stories, but a reader recently said, I like 8 out of the 10 stories that are in Mountain Gazette, and that feels fair to me. And I was like, cool, that feels fair to me too. I don't want to this isn't for everybody, and if everyone doesn't like it, that's totally okay. It's okay to try Mountain Gazette, not like it, and move on. It's just not for everybody. But for our audience, we definitely try to give them some variety and just really show them some things they haven't seen before.
How critical is it to understand your audience when you're choosing or selecting stories to go into a publication?
I think for it's important, but also it's something that our contributors really determine what's in the magazine. Every issue has had at least 2 or 3 first-time Mountain Gazette writers in it, or photographers in it. I think we have like 7 new writers, photographers, artists in this next issue. And so what's cool about that is it makes it really fresh. Every issue, same size, same format, but way different creative perspective. And so really we rely on our contributors to really shape the direction of the magazine. We've got one piece in the next issue that is, I'll say I'm curious what our readers will think. It's from a location that I'm not going to tell you on the pod. And it's a sport that people really love, especially in the spring and summertime. But I think it's being presented in a way that hasn't been presented before. And my thought is that some people are going to absolutely love this and some people are going to absolutely hate it. And I think that's a really good place for it to be.
Okay. Interesting. When you think about the relationship that you have with your audience, I mean, how do you think about that relationship? What words do you use to describe that relationship? Do you think of them as friends? Do you think of them as family? As cliche as that might sound?
We really try not to use the word family. I think that was overused in marketing for a really long time. The Mountain Gazette family. It's a community. It's filled with, troublemakers, musicians, artists, climbers, hikers, bikers, skiers. I think about, 2 subscribers that coincidentally live in my neighborhood, and they didn't realize I lived in the same neighborhood as them until they came by and saw me loading Mountain Gazette boxes in the back of my van, a couple years ago. And then her name's Kimmy. She actually hand painted a replica cover of 198 and gave it to me at a brewery. She'd been like a little coaster size thing. It was so cool. And she just did it. She's like, I don't know. I was staring at it every day and decided to paint it. So I think about, Kimmy and Danny who live in my neighborhood. I think about what we were talking about before the pod started, like Nick's, one of our contributors who we send the magazine to Ukraine. We haven't heard from him in a while. He lives in Kiev. And, I think about there's 300 subscribers plus in Japan. And just how cool that would be to try to get them all together one day. We have a ton of subscribers in San Francisco and New York and LA, DC metro area. We're adding a ton of subscribers from the Southeast and Texas. And what I think is cool is I probably had preconceived notions like, oh, an outdoorsman from Florida, an outdoorsman from Texas. Like we all have that idea of the license plate showing up and whatever. But these people, people live places for a lot of reasons. And people love places for a lot of reasons too. And sometimes those don't match up. If you love the mountains, you might not necessarily be able to live there. We have more subscribers in New York City than we do in Jackson Hole. And that's by nature of the fact there's just more outdoors people in New York City. There's 28 million people there versus Jackson, and that's not a diss to Jackson. We've got a lot of subscribers there too, per capita. But I guess when I think about our audience and how I would describe them is, they are a mishmash of people that would rather spend time outdoors than in front of a computer. That is the one thing that they all have in common. The other thing they have in common is they have the finest tuned bullshit detectors ever. If we send too many subscribe to the next issue things, they're emailing me being like, what is going on, dude? Are you guys doing okay? They just want to know. And I'm like, oh, sorry. It's just, we kind of overlooked it. I guess you're right. We should have done less. I'm like, my bad. But they're smart. They're interesting. They're young. They're a lot younger than I thought they would be. They're actually, most of our subscribers are, believe it or not, under 30, which means I'm actually 8 years older than our average subscriber. But I think they kind of fall in line with they're a generation that was raised on the internet. And so they're kind of sick of the internet. And if you were raised in anything, your first thing you do when you're older is you rebel. So I think for a certain generation, you buy a print magazine, a film camera, and you start getting vinyl, and then you're off to do it.
I'm curious, is there a barometer that you use to measure the respect that you hold for your audience? Are there internal guidelines that you have in place that you can just say, I think we're losing track of the magazine, or I think we're losing track of who our audience is? Are there things that you use to gauge keeping your audience at the center of what you do, guardrails that you put in place?
Well, we won't take money for any advertorial. That's one thing. We don't do paid social media posts. When we do, email sign up giveaways, which is what a lot of direct to consumer brands like ours do, we always try to make it something that they couldn't just go to an REI and buy all the items. We try to make it an interesting trip. We actually just got word that it was really cool. We got an email from one of the winners of one of our past contests. It was just updating Austin and I that he and his wife are expecting their first kid. And so I don't know. I think it's pretty holistic. One thing is like if you go to our Instagram page and you look at the stories of every issue, so starting with 194, we never ever asked our audience to do this. They just started doing it. They do unboxing videos, and they do like lifestyle photo shoots of like how big the magazine is next to their cat, or like, one reader like skinned up a mountain at night and like was reading the first issue via headlamp. People have brought them on like cruise ships or down to Mexico on surf trips. Some people have 2 subscriptions. They bring one to their house and one to their family cabin for their family. We get a lot of people that like say they were looking for a gift for their kid and they ended up buying it too, and they connect about it. I don't know. I think there's just so many cool ways. The craziest thing for my wife and I is like we're here in North Lake Tahoe and we'll see people that we don't know wearing Mountain Gazette hats or hoodies. And it's hard for me not to just go up and start talking to everyone, but you can see if you're not watching this, I'm wearing a Mets hat right now. It's the same thing. I live in California. I'm a Mets fan. If I see someone with a Mets hat, it's hard for me not to go up and start talking about the Mets with someone. But, to me, it's like there's so many ways we can measure it. Big one is our writers tell us that even though their stories are only in print, they hear from a lot of people like, oh my God, I was so happy to see your story in Mountain Gazette. I loved your story. And they like start specifically and they're like, I've never had that done anywhere else. So, yeah.
What's been one of the hardest decisions that your team has had to make in order to care about your audience? Is there a singular decision that sticks out?
I won't say it was hard. I'll just say that we gave it a lot of thought, but we received an offer to get, it was just shy of 6 figures, like a really big ad offer. Thankfully, like we are not beholden to advertisers. It doesn't really move the needle for us revenue wise. We like to partner with brands that we like to partner with. And I think we turned down a significant amount of money. I was just trying to think of the date. It was in February. So we got the offer in November. We asked if we could wait. We got through the holidays. And then came January. We all decided like it was just a product we didn't believe in. And we said no. And their agency said, well, do you need more money? And we said, well, it's actually not about money. And I think that was sort of a weird thing. I think most people think print magazines are so desperate for money that we'll take anything. But I won't say that was hard, man. I'll just say that like it was something we we're mindful of. We thought about it a lot. And it literally wasn't about, do we want the money? Do we not want the money? It wasn't even about that. It was like, is this the type of message we want to send to our audience? And the answer was no. And so we turned them down and it was okay. We had 4 other brands waiting for that spot. So it was all good.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned earlier, and I want to come back to this, this idea that you described a food diet similar to a media diet, and how there's a plethora of types of media out there, and like the diet you consume, there's a variety of types of media that you can consume, and we're all looking for different pieces. We're all looking for theoretically a healthy balance of media that we consume. Can you elaborate more on this idea?
Sure. So, Mountain Gazette comes twice a year. I think if you got it more than that, it would lose its specialness, if you will. I think because you have to wait for it, it kind of means it's like, I joke that like our spring issue is going to be in season in May, just like all those spring fruits and vegetables that we all can't wait to eat after a long winter. And, personally, I consume a lot of podcasts. I balance between reading, hardbound books, paperback books, books on my iPad, audiobooks. I'm, headed to Colorado tomorrow. And so I'm looking for a good audiobook to listen to on my road trip back to California. I am a pretty fervent reader of like trashy baseball blogs, I really love baseball. I love watching, Instagram reels from like Slush, both the snowboarding title and Slush, the ski thing. It's just like watching like great ski tricks. I'll watch anything Candy Tovex puts out on Instagram. I think that like, yeah, I've got coffee table books. I go to live concerts. I stream live concerts. I'm not on TikTok. I was on TikTok. Not my favorite medium, but whatever. Maybe I'm just not. Maybe TikTok's not for me, and I'm okay with that, you know? But I think what I try to do is like, you know how it is. If you're like up, you're really into a book and it's getting late into the night, you're not tired. But if you're kind of grinding through a book and you're getting tired and you fall asleep, like maybe you're kind of reading that book too much. Maybe you should put it off and finish it on a different day. But I mean, I'll listen to spring training games while I'm skiing. I'll listen to podcasts, you know, every day in the car. If I feel like I'm kind of not that informed about what's going on in the world, I'll dig back into NPR or whatever. And I just think, to me, a balanced media diet is more about the medium than the message. You know, we all have had that eye strain before. I know friends that will go to 5 nights of Fish at Madison Square Garden or something like that, and they come back and they are spent. Maybe too much live music for a little bit, but it's like anything, you know, everything can be good for you in moderation, and really nothing's good for you if it's totally consuming you. And I think we see that too in so many stories about teen addiction to social media and that validation. Like, you know, you can get validation reading a 4,000 word New Yorker story, I think, just as much as you can. It comes a little slower than an Instagram post.
Yeah, so something that I hear often, I feel like there's this misconception or this belief out there that people want shorter content. People want short form content, and that is taking over and has taken over the need for long form content. And I don't think I disagree, or I do disagree. I don't know that there's truth in that, but I think that there's a belief that that's the direction that things are going. And it seems like kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, is that if we say this is what people want, then that's what we'll continue to create. And I have a feeling you feel differently, but I'm curious if you could kind of speak to that self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, are we perpetuating as a society, as the backcountry marketing world, like, are we perpetuating this supposed desire for short form content?
You know, so when I started Mountain Gazette back up, I grabbed a lot of advisors from the media world, non-endemic and outdoor endemic. One of my favorites is Jason Leventhal from J Skis, who helped me set up my Shopify site, my Klaviyo, like helped me kind of set up, here's how you're going to do things, you know, where you're going to put links, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, he goes, by the way, this is totally not going to work because nobody reads. I think the hardest thing, man, is that like sometimes we think just because we don't participate in activity, like for example, I'm not on TikTok, but I would not deny that TikTok is like a very real medium that people love. You know what I mean? It's just not for me. For a long time, my wife and I lived in a house here in Tahoe that did not have access to high-speed internet. So we became vinyl collectors, and that was really special for us. It was really cool. And then, you know, when it came to like streaming, we'd come to the office, download a movie for the night, and that was like our film content. And those are really good times for us. It was why we were able to afford our house, because no one wanted to live in a house in California that didn't have internet. But I think the only way to find out if the medium is working is to try it and to listen to the audience, you know? But I also think that there's a lot of media leaders that are pretty arrogant and think that they know all, you know? And like, I mean, I think I guess I wake up every morning wondering how our audience is going to change and what they're going to want. I mean, my favorite thing is when people ask us, hey, why don't you make a 3rd or 4th issue of Mountain Gazette, you know, go quarterly or do 2 issues and a special issue. And they're pretty surprised when we email them a link to subscribe to Adventure Journal, because those are our friends. And we're like, look, if you subscribe to these 2, you get 6 awesome outdoor general interest magazines per year. Or you could subscribe to Free Hub, or you could subscribe to Ori, which is a travel-based magazine, or Victory Journal, which is a sports magazine. You know, like our thing is like, again, I don't know that long form is alive and well, or investigative journalism is alive and well. I just know what we do here and what our audience wants. And I think when it comes to the short form thing, like there are dead media companies everywhere that show that short form doesn't work, that pivoting to video doesn't work, that all these things don't work. Like the problem is everyone's got the same ideas. They just have really bad execution.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by ideas, bad execution?
So, I mean, there's like several media companies right now that are like, we're going to pivot to video, right? We're going to pivot to video as if that's a new thing. You know, like 15 years ago when I was working for xgames.com, they stopped hiring writers because they were going to pivot to video, you know, and that didn't work. The X Games ended up selling. And now I think X Games is back into understanding what their audience wants, and their audience skews younger. I think the X Games mode, like clips that they do, are really cool. I consume them. I watch them. It's great. And I think X Games, like, I guess we can say they pivoted to video in the correct way. Whereas other people were like, oh, maybe we can be a new streamer. And it's like, yeah, I think that could be a good idea. That takes as you know, as someone that produces film, it takes a buttload of money to do. And so it's like, okay, is that a good way to execute that vision? I think if you're going to go for something, you just got to go 100%. And if you believe short form video is the future, then go full bore and make the best short form video content so it's undeniable, you know? But if you go half-ass, that doesn't mean, I guess it doesn't mean your pivot worked or didn't work. It just means that you didn't execute correctly. That goes back to caring about your contributors and caring about your audience. If you put out shit media, you're going to get shit customers. It's just how it goes.
To build on that, though, like how much of knowing your audience is understanding yourself? Is there a connection there, or are those two separate?
Maybe. I don't know. I do separate it. I don't want Mountain Gazette to be like Mike Rogge's feelings journal. You know, there have been times in my life, you know, I have two young kids. There have been like challenging times chasing two kids under 5 around the last 2 years that I don't think came out in the magazine, you know? And so I guess what I can say is like, I can exist separate from the magazine. While still, you know, it's just like having empathy for other people and not assuming that your feelings are shared by everyone around you.
The more I think about like good storytelling, and the more I think about telling stories that relate and connect with people, the more I think about empathy and how critical that skill, that emotion is. You used that word there, and I feel like empathy is the key to a lot of this stuff. It's putting yourself in the shoes of someone else.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people wrongly assume that I learned this empathy and like community, like building skills from working in other media companies. I didn't. My father runs a 300 plus unit mobile home park, low income housing, which is a very hot topic right now. What with the housing crisis in America. But the anecdote I always share is that my dad's birthday is at the end of March. It's coming up. Every year he's got 1 or 2 members of his community that will bake him cookies or a pie or something like that. Now I want to just be clear. My dad is a low income landlord, essentially, is what it boils down to. No one's ever tried to poison him. You know, like, why do people do this for his birthday? Well, it's because when my dad's driving through the neighborhood, you know, like on his way to a meeting or something like that, he'll see someone dragging a mattress out for trash day. And my dad will stop his truck, get out and pick up the other half and help them just for a minute. He isn't charged for that service. He just was like, hey, this is someone that has provided my family with a comfortable living, and like, I respect them and they need some help and I'm here and I should help them. You know, he will, fix a broken lawnmower for someone. Again, like, he will send guys over if someone's moving out, maybe to help them. And this isn't in the lease. This isn't part of New York State guidelines of how to run a mobile home park or anything like that. This is just who my mom and dad are. And when it comes to empathy, my mom's the youngest of 8 kids in a big old Irish Catholic family. You know, like you have to have a lot of empathy to understand 7 siblings and your mom and dad and what they're going through, you know? And so I learned these things from my parents. And what I think is cool is like, it really is just trying to give a shit about other people. You know, we've got readers that send us emails like, hey, I work for Montana State Parks Foundation and we're doing a fundraiser to try to reclaim 26 acres of land for the Montana State public. Can you send a couple hoodies? And I'm like, absolutely, for sure. Now, if we were backed by venture capital, we might get asked the end of the year, what's the ROI on that? Dude, who knows? Who cares? We just need to help. You know, they asked for our help and we could help. You know, like our photographer in Ukraine, I asked if there's anything I could do. And he's like, hey man, could I get a hoodie? I'm actually a big guy. It's got to be triple XL. So after this podcast, I'm going to send a triple XL hoodie to the middle of a war zone because he wants one of our hoodies. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's like crumbs make a cake. That's what my father-in-law always says. You know, like you don't need to strike the one big deal. You don't have to have the one big story. I think like all these little, you know, people talk about microaggressions. Like I think you can do the opposite of that. You can do like micro good deeds and it'll all kind of add up. It's not to say that I need to be liked or loved by everyone, but at the same time, if we can help, what better purpose for a magazine to serve than as a member of the community that can offer some help with our newfound resources.
Crumbs make a cake. I have not heard that expression. I like that.
Yeah, cool. That's a Bob Forbes original. He's my father-in-law. Lives in Westchester County. Sells insurance. Good dude. Goes to a lot of jam band shows. So
it almost kind of feels like that's what you guys are doing. Like, you know, you've pieced together this incredible community and you've built a metaphorical cake with the Mountain Gazette.
I feel like that, man. I really do. And I think the idea is just like we can do big things, like partner with Donnie Pelletier and do a Protect Our Friggin' Winners campaign. And I think we donated like $22,000 to POW before the midterms. That felt really cool. But we can do small things where someone ordered the wrong size hoodie and it's just such a mess. You could tell they're frustrated and I messed up and blah, 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 blah. And we're like, hey, we're sending you the correct size on the house. Take that hoodie that you bought and give it to a friend. And again, I think it's almost like that butterfly effect, that ripple effect of like, they're going to find a friend's we always say, if you have a friend's having a bad day or could use a boost, like throw them a hoodie. And it's like, dude, you're having a shit day and someone gives you a hoodie, even if you don't know what Mountain Gazette is, like you're going to have a positive brand association with it because your friend was thinking of you. And I think it's like those little things, you know, like just, it's little things, not big things. You know, championships are won in the details, right? That's like what they always say. It's game of inches, whatever. But that's how I feel about making media. You know, we spell someone's name wrong. It's like the biggest offense we can do in the magazine. I like do my best to make it up to them in several different ways, including, I mean, the bare minimum, a correction. But, you know, we want to do the right thing. It's a crazy idea.
Well, and it sounds like, I mean, it works. Like people
I think
respond.
So. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I see a lot of media companies that I guess a lot of companies that do things like this. You know, like I'm friends with the guys from the band Goose. I wrote about them in 198, developed a friendship with a couple of the guys from the band. And what I noticed is that they have like real relationships with their fans. They're not like parasocial or anything like that. Like they know their fans. They will hang out with them before shows or after shows. And the idea is like, why not? These people are coming to see us. Like, you know, I don't think it's giving too much. I think it's just giving enough, you know, and those small efforts make a big difference.
Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you think is relevant for folks to know? Any other thoughts about this idea? The sense that I'm getting though is you guys care about the details, you care about the stories, but really at the end of the day, you care about your audience. And if you care about your audience, then all of those other things find clarity.
I think so. Yeah. I wish more brands would do that. I wish more brands would. My favorite brands are the ones that really care about their customers. Like in the last couple of years, I've become a fan of Outer Known, which was originally known as Kelly Slater's brand. He owns a very small minority of it, but the people over there are great. And what I love is, you know, I ordered a pair of pants. They ripped. There was a defective like stitch or something like that. And I sent them a photo. And I wasn't a jerk. I was just like, hey, I just bought these. This is my second time wearing them. They ripped. I haven't even washed them yet, which is kind of gross. But they were like, oh, yeah, cool. Like, we'll send you a replacement pair. Could you put those in the mail and send them to us? Here's like a UPS like shipping label. And here, what was cool is I think they threw me a $25 credit for my time of going to a UPS store and like packaging up, shipping, whatever. And I was just like, dude, it's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like really impressed by them caring deeply. You know, Peak Design is another one, you know, like packages to barely make it to Tahoe ever. You know, they got my camera case got rerouted and they were like, oh, dude, no worries. As soon as it gets back to our warehouse, we're going to reship it and we'll overnight it because we know you want it. I was like, no, you don't have to overnight it. It's like, no, man, it's all good. You know, like we want to make sure you get this thing. And it, again, wasn't even their fault. So, you know, I think that's the idea is like not really placing blame on people when it comes to this stuff, but actually just being like, hey, this is how people feel. Let's like hear them out and respect it and make a call off of that, you know, not just be quick to judge. I mean, I think Americans especially are trained to think that outrage gets you what you want with customer service. And, you know, when it comes back to respecting our audience, I mean, you know, we have 2 customer service reps that live in India, you know, Kamal and Anisha, and they are part of our crew as much as anyone's a part of our crew. And at this point, I mean, yeah, Kamal's been with us almost longer than anyone else, except for maybe John, Kim, and I. And if someone is bad mouthing her, or God forbid, like make some sort of like racial slur or gender slur, we actually do a favor for them. We give them their money back. They can keep the magazine, and we don't want them to subscribe to Mountain Gazette. That's also respecting your audience of saying like, hey, dude, like that type of shit doesn't fly here. So the respect goes both ways. You know, it's not to say that we're threatening people, being like, we'll cancel your order. But if you're not showing basic respect to our crew who's doing the best to respect to you, then it's not going to happen. Now, if you write an article or say something, or you write an op-ed saying that an article sucked, we're not going to cancel your subscription. We're going to listen to you. We're going to read it, and we'll debate, and we'll have a healthy, constructive debate about it. But I do think the respect goes both ways, and that's made for a much better working environment for everybody. You know, not everyone needs to be your customer. We're not always right. The customer is not always right. People make mistakes. And I think it's just having a little bit of grace and forgiving people for those mistakes. That's the key.
If you had to distill some takeaways for folks who are listening, what would you want people to take from this and apply either to their day or to the projects or ideas that they have?
There's a metaphor of pushing the ball forward, like rolling a ball uphill, right? I don't think that works. Let's go with crumbs make a cake, right? So try to do 1 or 2 things at minimum every single day to improve your life, improve your business. You know, go to your website. Oh, you know, I don't really like the way that sounds. Rewrite it. You've done something for your day. And most people will laugh and say, well, that's not really working hard. I disagree. I think working hard is not about physically exerting yourself. I think working hard is about sustaining a level of success over a long period of time. And that doesn't need to be measurable. You know, Jimmy Chin does not win an Oscar or an Emmy every single day of his life. He's won, I believe, 2 of them, one of each. And so I think like if you can take something away from this conversation that we had, it's that 1, we're not as crazy as you think at Mountain Gazette. We're actually just trying to be decent people. And 2 is just, do something small every day to improve your life or your business. And I think you'll see results over time. It's very measurable for sure.
I'm going to write crumbs make a cake and put that on a Post-it note, put it here on the desktop monitor. Cause I love that. I'm still thinking about that. I feel like it's such a great, and don't know. It's hitting me. It's good.
Good. Yeah.
Mike, I appreciate the conversation and you sharing some ideas with us. If folks want to connect with you, if they want to follow along, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me twice a year in the pages of Mountain Gazette. It's where I do most of my writing. And you could subscribe to the magazine at mountaingazette.com/subscribe. Our spring issue comes out the first week of May.
Incredible. Well, Mike, I wish you and the team the best as you're getting everything ready for launch. And I'm sure there's many people out there who are waiting to see what you guys have in this next issue. So again, I appreciate it. I appreciate the time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.